channel. Today I'm going to be colouring in Fairy and Fantasy 2 Grayscale Colouring Book by Christine Karron, and I'm wanting to do the Sugar Plum Princess. So I'm wanting to do this page with you. Just bring in a bit more light. So in this video I will be really showing you a lot more how to work with your white pencil. It was recently brought to my attention that one of my viewers has been working with their white pencil and has been struggling to actually get the white pencil effects to work well. So I thought I would do a page really dedicated to relying heavily on my white pencil. So what I'm going to do is I am going to be using my Prismacolor white pencil, which is this one. And the reason I'm going to be using Prismacolor Premier White is because the Prismacolor pencils are a wax-based pencil. They have a very soft core, they're very creamy, and they blend very, very well together. It is one of the best white pencils that I have colored with. But I'm also going to be making use of the Castle Art white pencil because this is a budget set of crayons and would be possibly similar to what many beginner colorists would be using in their coloring toolkit. So I'm going to see what this paper will allow me to work with and kind of show you how I would use and adapt both. Now, with the Prismacolor Premier white pencil, because of its nature, it allows for a much deeper white than say the Castle Art, but both of them, my pencil's running away, both of them together will create beautiful effect. I also want to talk about values when it comes to coloring, because you can have a full range of one color, let's say greens for example, or blues, and you can go from very light blue all the way to very dark blue. Now that range within your colors is actually called value. So when you have a very pale blue, for example, it has a very light value compared to a very dark blue, which has a much darker value. And in our artwork and our coloring, we use the different values to help us create depth and dimension to our page. If I go and leave all the white of the paper as the bits for my highlights and I don't color it in and bring in other colors, my page is going to look very flat and it's going to lack in depth and dimension. But if I bring in those lighter values and I contrast them with my dark values, so my deep blues instead of my very light blues, if I use the two together, I will create a page that has a lot of depth and dimension. So in this color along series, I'm going to be showing you how to use your white pencil, how to use your different values within the same family of colors, so whether it's blues or reds or greens, but within the same family. And I'm also going to be showing you how to do hair, skin, wings, eyes, and transparent clothing. So I hope you're ready. I'm also going to be showing you how to do pearls. I'm not going to worry about lighting or anything fancy, and I'm just going to really kick you off in how this is going to work. So I'm going to bring in, I think I'm going to do something very, very different. So she's a Sugar Plum Fairy. So what comes to mind when I think plum, I'm thinking, you know, my reds, my pinks, those sort of colors. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give her very light wings. I'm going to create this candy here in shades of pinks and reds with white. So I think what we'll do is we'll actually give her, I'll try go for a plum color, but I'm also going to show you how I'm going to use white pencils in the sweet in her wings, because we're going to give her transparent wings. How I use the white pencil to blend her skin and create highlights in her clothing. And the white pencil will also probably come in handy here, because we'll give her very rich dress, but then a whitish kind of transparent clothing here. It can't be too white, so it will most likely go it might actually be a light blue, because the blue will contrast nicely with the plum color. And then we'll see about her jewelry. So we're just gonna go for it. Or I might completely change this all up and totally change it up. All right, so I'm going to actually come in first with my white Prismacolor pencil. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to use Castle Arts for the dress, and I'm going to be using 25, 27 and 87. So my pencils are all a little bit muddled up. Now again, Castle Arts are really just an entry level pencil. I started my coloring journey with Castle Arts in 2020, and I thoroughly enjoyed them. It just depends on the paper, because if you have the wrong paper, they don't blend very well. So it's worth bearing in mind that paper quality, actually, there is a lot to be said for paper quality. I'm just trying to find my other pencil. I think it's this one. Yes. Okay, so I'm going to make sure I've got all my pencils sharpened. Okay, so I'm going to use my white pencil, and I'm going to lay down the very bright highlights. Now I'm putting down my white first, because I want to make sure my highlights are in, and I also want to ensure that when I bring over with my lighter pinky red, that I'm going to be getting a very soft color, because this is my highlight area. So this is a grayscale, and with grayscale, what you want to do is wherever the paper is white, that's your highlight. As the shading gets darker, the darkest gray is where you're going to put your deeper shadows. So I'm first going to lay in my highlight, and then I'm going to go in and do my shadows. Now for my shadows, I'm going to be using a mixture of 25 and 27. So I'm first going to do 25. And I'm going to do a gradient. And where it's darker, I'm going over it several times, and I'm just going to make sure that I'm getting enough tone. And then over here in the frill, all right, so that's my shadowed area for the dress. You can see a lot of the dress is actually really light. And then I'm going to bring in 087, which is Alizarin Crimson. So the one I used before was Indian Red. And I'm going to go in and I'm going to bring this out. And I'm using a light pressure because right now I'm just going in and I am mapping out my picture. And I want here where I've put the white, it's going to come out much lighter. And I'm going to alternate the white with this color so that it stays light and stays a highlight, but without it being pure white, because her dress doesn't have pure white splotches. It has this beautiful plum color to it. Okay, so here I'm going to layer up with my white pencil. Now, if you do not have enough pigment down on your paper, as you can see here, I don't have a lot of pigment down. It's not going to blend and create this beautiful white effect, or it's not going to be as smooth as you like, because it will only blend the pigment that you have. So that is why I layer up so much, or I vary my pressure, because I'm trying to build up and give the paper enough pigment to actually move around with my pencil when I'm blending. So I'm going to do the same thing, and I'm going to be darker in here, and it will be lighter because this is quite a light color. Okay, now over here, it's a highlight, but then you've got to put in the shadow so that the dress stays having definition. So this is the Indian red. And remember, I'm using Castle Arts here. Now I want this shadow area here to be a little bit deeper. So I'm going to need to bring in a bit of a purple. Now here you can mix your colors. If you have Prismacolor pencils, you can mix them, but I will show you how to use a purple. So if we use Aubergine, which is 28, you'll see it will create a deeper shadow. So here I'm deepening the value of the color I am using. All right, and then if I take the Indian red light and if I go over this, now this is quite saturated. I'm not going to be able to get much more in these shadow areas. And the way you can tell that is when you can feel it's got a lot of pigment. It feels almost slightly thick and heavy, and if the paper isn't actually going to take more pigment, so no matter how many times you go over and over it, if it's not changing and layering up more, then you know you've saturated it. All right, so now I come back with my Alizarin Crimson and going into here where the ribbons are creating a bit of shadow. Now if you look here compared to here, you can see that the amount of pigment is different, and that's because of the amount of layers we've put on. All right, so now I want to put in a bit more aubergine. And a bit more Indian red. Okay, so now I want to bring in my white pencil again, and I'm going to layer this up. But I'm also going to use my white pencil as a blender. And if you want it to be very, very smooth, you need to go in circular motions and repeatedly. Okay, so now my Alizarin Crimson again, and now I'm going to start working on burnishing, and that is when I'm pushing the pigment into the tooth of the paper, and I'm going to finish this section of her dress. Okay, and if you need to, just sharpen your pencil. If you would like to know what coloring supplies I use, you can always check out my coloring supplies video, which I will link in the description below. And it will give you an idea of what kind of sharpeners I like to use, and coloring pencils I have, all my stuff. So the key thing is just to have a lot of pigment and a lot of layers on your page. And that's how you're going to get those beautiful blends, those seamless blends. And also just be patient with it. It's not, you can't rush it. Okay, so like here, if I bring in the Prismacolor Premier pencil, you're going to see a total difference in the blending, and that is just because of the softness this pencil has. It's a very softer core, so it blends easily. It will work with Castle Arts because they are both wax pencils, so that it will blend it out. And as you can see, it's much smoother blend. But it does milky up your the color. So if it's too milky, you just add in the color again. You don't have to use a very hard pressure, just a light pressure is all you need. And then you'll have a beautiful beautiful blend. Now what you can also do is use a blending pencil or a burnishing pencil. So if I use my burnisher, it's just going to get rid of the tooth of the paper and it will blend this all out. And you don't need to press hard. If you have enough pigment on the page, it will do the work for you. It will just move it all around. Okay, so now the same thing for the rest of her dress. If we come in here and we use our white pencil, let's see, we'll get a blend. So I'm just alternating between Aubergine, Indian Red Light and Indian Red. And then a bit of Alizarin Crimson, just to make sure it's not a milky highlight there. Okay, but now if we move into this transparent scarf, we need to bring in some of this dress color. Otherwise, it's not going to work. It's not going to show as transparent. So with transparent clothing, it is very important that you bring in the color of the object that is peeking behind it, peeking through. Okay, you're not going to build it up to the extent, this is the aubergine, you're not going to build it up to the extent that you've got it here, but you want to have that pigment. Let's use some Indian red, and you need a few layers just to illustrate the different values in your color. Okay, now if I take a white pencil and I can start blending that out. Okay, now if I use the Prismacolor one, I can move that pigment out a bit more. So here if I use a bit of the red Indian light, so again you just follow the grayscale. It's all you really need to do is just follow the grayscale. It does the work for you. And your job is to just follow it. So here I'm using the Alizarin Crimson. So with your white pencil, it is more of a blending pencil, a blending tool, and a highlight tool. When it comes to coloring something white, you've probably heard me mention this in previous videos. White is never really white. It has lighter shades in it. It will have grays, light yellows, light peaches, light pinks, depending on the light that's, depending on the highlight and what you're wanting to create. So it's never going to be as straightforward as I'm just going to leave it white. Now, you need to add your shadows with different colors because that's going to give it that dimension and that depth. It's going to create the contours around the body. Now, with this page, because it's grayscale, I don't have to worry about that. The grayscale will do it for me. But when you're doing white, that's how I see it. In this case, on her dress, I'm using the white pencil as a highlighter and as a blender. I'm not using it to create white. Okay, so now I'm going to build up some of those shadowed areas. Now most of this is very light, so I don't need to really build up shadows too much. Okay, so here we need to be very careful because here we're going to have some of the colors coming through. So you see that I'll have to change because that is actually her elbow. So here is her dress, and here, which means in here. So this is where you've got to see where her dress, her figure is here. Okay, so I'm not going to worry about this, but if you don't like it, you can just get an eraser and erase it. So this bit here is right, and then here. Okay, so then I'm going to bring this in here. So unfortunately, I had a little bit of trouble with my phone and it stopped recording. But anyway, to complete the dress, what you need to do is just continue using the colors I have picked out, and the same process I did over here, which you saw me color. I applied the same process over here.